What if I told you that the greatest empire in history was built by a man who today would be called a chronic alcoholic? Forget everything you thought you knew about great rulers for a minute. Picture this. It's 1227. Genghis Khan, the shaker of the universe, is dead. His colossal empire is on the brink of collapse, and his eldest sons, cruel, ambitious warriors, hardened in dozens of battles, are all eyeing the throne. Who would you put in his place? Surely the strongest one. But the answer will shock you, because the wisest conqueror of all chose the one man nobody took seriously. His third son, Ögedei, good-natured, generous, and a hopeless drinker. Are you ready to learn the truth about the most underestimated ruler in history? In this episode, we're going to become detectives and break down 5 key decisions this man made. How did a ruler who couldn't conquer his own addiction manage to finish his father's work and conquer China? How did he, while despising bureaucracy, create the most effective postal system in the world that worked for centuries? And the ultimate paradox, how did his personal tragedy and death from alcoholism literally save Europe from total annihilation? This is the story of a man whose genius was as great as his vice. Buckle up. We're getting started. Imagine yourself in Genghis Khan's position during the final years of his life. You are the most powerful man on the planet, but your empire is a powder keg, ready to explode at any second. And the fuse for this keg is your own sons. You have 4 candidates for the throne. Candidate number 1, Jochi, a brilliant commander, but with a dark spot on his reputation. Many whisper he isn't your biological son. Candidate number 2, Ögedei, a cruel and inflexible guardian of the law, a true attack dog for the Yasa, feared and hated by all. Candidate number 3, Ögedei, the life of the party, a generous and good-natured guy, but with one fatal weakness: he was already a notorious alcoholic. And finally, the youngest, Tolyu, his father's favorite, a brave warrior. Who would you bet on? To whom would you entrust the fate of the world? Genghis Khan's answer isn't just surprising, it's shocking. Now, let's transport ourselves to the center of the action, to that fateful Kurultai. The air in the yurt is electric. Genghis Khan asks his firstborn, Jochi, about the inheritance. And right then, Ögedei, unable to contain his hatred, hurls an insult in his face, alluding to his questionable origins. It was the same as striking a match next to a powder keg. The brothers leaped to their feet, their hands on the hilts of their swords. A civil war was ready to begin right at their father's feet. And at that moment, as everything was hurtling into the abyss, Genghis Khan turned to the only one who was silent, Ögedei. "What do you have to say?" he asks. And Ögedei, without drama or ambition, says a simple phrase: "If my father will entrust me with this difficult duty, I will accept it." In the ringing silence, the choice was made. The greatest conqueror in history had chosen a drunkard as his successor. So, what was the logic? Let's unpack Genghis Khan's motives. He was acting as a cold strategist, understanding that his empire would be destroyed not by an external enemy, but by internal infighting. Jochi and Ögedei were like 2 opposite poles. Their conflict would have guaranteed a split in the empire. But why not the youngest and favorite, Tolyu, a brilliant warrior? For that very reason. In this family of predators, placing another alpha male in charge meant provoking the others. It would have been like adding fuel to the fire of their jealousy. Genghis Khan wasn't looking for the strongest, He was looking for the safest. He needed glue, not another sharp blade. And Ögedei, with his easygoing nature and obvious lack of thirst for power, was the only candidate who posed no direct threat to any of his brothers. He was the perfect compromise figure, a politician in a family of warriors. It was a brilliant and in some ways cruel move. Genghis Khan sacrificed the warrior strength of one son to buy unity for all of them. What is a nomadic empire? To contemporaries, it was a perpetually moving terror. The horde had no center. Its capital was wherever the Great Khan's tent stood for the day. Genghis Khan ruled from the saddle. His palace was the steppe. This mobility was their greatest weapon. But Ögedei, upon becoming Great Khan, also understood its greatest weakness. How do you govern a gigantic territory when ambassadors from China, Persia, and the Russian principalities spend weeks searching for your camp in the endless steppe? How do you collect taxes, receive reports, and demonstrate greatness if you have nothing but temporary yurts? The empire had grown to such proportions that the old nomadic methods of rule simply stopped working. It needed a permanent center, a nerve center, a heart that would pump orders and laws through the empire's arteries. And so, Ögedei makes a decision that to many Mongol conservatives sounded like heresy. In 1235, he gives the order to build Karakorum, the first stone capital of the Mongol Empire. This wasn't just a city, it was a challenge to their entire culture. On an empty spot in the Orkhon River Valley, a massive construction project began. By the Khan's order, the best craftsmen were gathered from every corner of the empire. Chinese engineers, Persian architects, European jewelers. Instead of the familiar yurts, palaces rose, along with temples for different religions, Buddhist, Muslim, and Christian, and artisan quarters. The chronicler Rashid al-Din writes that Ögedei personally supervised the construction, lavishly handing out gold and silver, wanting to create a city that would stagger the imagination of any visitor. The steppe dwellers' dream of a great city began to take shape in stone. Now let's figure out what was behind this decision. Was it simple vanity? No, it was cold political calculation. First, Karakorum became a symbol. It visibly demonstrated to the whole world that the Mongols were not just a savage horde, but a new civilization, a new power that was here to stay. It was a powerful propaganda move. Second, the city became an administrative hub. This was where all the threads of government now led, along with tribute from conquered peoples, reports from spies, and accounts from governors. Ögedei was creating the bureaucratic apparatus without which the empire was ungovernable. And third, most interestingly, with this step, Ögedei began the slow process of domesticating the Mongol elite. He showed them that one could live not only in the saddle, but also in palaces. He was shifting the focus from plunder to governance. Genghis Khan had created a war machine. His son, Ögedei, began turning it into a state. So Ögedei now had his capital, Karakorum. But a city is just a dot on the map. How do you connect that dot to the rest of the world, to the gigantic territories from China to the Caspian Sea? Imagine an army in the west suffers a defeat. By the time a messenger reaches the Khan, months will have passed. In that time, the front could collapse. A governor in Persia is plotting a rebellion. By the time the capital finds out, he will have already created his own khanate. Genghis Khan's empire was a colossus with feet of clay, a giant body without a nervous system, unable to react to pain and threats in time. Ögedei understood. Without speed of information, his empire was doomed. He needed a technology that would, emphasis level moderate, compress space and time. And Ögedei solves this problem. He takes the system of postal stations created by his father and turns it into a global project known as the Yam, or Arto. What was it? Imagine a network of stations located one horse's ride apart along all the main roads of the empire. At every station rested horses, food, and fodder. The Khan's messenger, carrying a special tablet, a peza, would race from station to station, swapping his tired horse for a fresh one and fly onward, stopping neither day nor night. This system allowed for the delivery of decrees and reports at speeds of up to 300 kilometers, nearly 200 miles, for the 13th century. This was almost supernatural speed. Simultaneously, Ögedei launches another revolution. He introduces the first paper money in Mongol history, based on the Chinese model. For nomads accustomed to bartering with livestock and silver, this was a cultural shock. So what did Ögedei actually do? He created the two most important systems of any modern state: logistics and finance. The Yam system became the circulatory system and nerve fibers of his empire. Along it moved not only orders and spies, but also merchants and ambassadors, all at incredible speed. This sparked a boom in trade unseen since the days of the Roman Empire. And the introduction of paper money allowed him to centralize tax collection and simplify commerce, transforming plunder into a stable economy. Look at the paradox. The nomad Ögedei, whom many considered a simple-minded drunk, was thinking like a brilliant CEO. He understood what many settled kings did not. An empire is held together not just by the strength of its army, but by the speed of its information and the stability of its currency. He wasn't building a horde, he was building a global corporation. Ögedei's empire had gained a capital and a nervous system, but the shadow of his father still loomed over the throne. Genghis Khan had left behind one great unfinished piece of business: the war with the Jin dynasty in northern China. This enemy was exhausted, but not broken. For the Mongol nobility, this was a matter of honor. Could Ögedei, the soft Khan, finish what the shaker of the universe had started? This was the ultimate test of his legitimacy. Failure would mean he was unworthy of being his father's son. At the same time, another problem was brewing in the West: ambitious nephews and brothers, commanders who craved glory and loot. This boiling, destructive energy needed to be directed outward and fast before it blew up the empire from within. Ögedei acts on two fronts simultaneously. He throws his best forces south to put an end to the Chinese campaign. After brutal sieges, in 1234, the Jin dynasty, which had fought the Mongols for decades, finally fell. The last Jin emperor committed suicide to avoid capture. Genghis's will was fulfilled. Ögedei had proven to everyone that he was a worthy heir. And then, just when it seemed time to celebrate, he convenes the Great Kurultai of 1235 in Karakorum. But he doesn't talk about China. His gaze is fixed thousands of kilometers to the west. He announces the beginning of the Great Western Campaign. At the head of a massive army, his nephew Batu was formally placed, but this was Ögedei's own will and plan. From his palace in the heart of Asia, he set an avalanche in motion, one destined to roll all the way to Poland, Hungary, and the Adriatic Sea. Let's unpack the genius of this double strike. Finishing the war with the Jin wasn't just a conquest, it was an act of filial piety, the fulfillment of his father's covenant, which strengthened his authority in a way no other victory could have. He showed the old guard that he honored tradition. But the campaign to the west, that was pure geopolitics and brilliant management. Ögedei understood. The Mongol military aristocracy was a pack of wolves. If they weren't fed with war, they would start to tear each other apart. By sending Batu and other ambitious Genghisids to conquer Europe, he was killing two birds with one stone. He was expanding the empire, and more importantly, he was removing all potential rivals far from the capital. He turned their thirst for power into a tool for achieving his own goals. Genghis Khan was a warrior who led from the front. Ögedei proved himself to be an emperor who sits at the center of a web, moving pieces on a global chessboard. The early 1240s. Ögedei's empire has reached its zenith. His armies in the west are unstoppable. Ryazan, Moscow, and Kiev have fallen. Mongol Tumans ground the combined armies of the Poles and Teutonic Knights into dust at Legnica, and then annihilated the Hungarian army at the Battle of the Sayo River. Europe was in a state of terror. The Pope called for a new crusade, but no one could stop this avalanche. It seemed that one more push and Mongol horses would be drinking from the Rhine. But while messengers carried news of triumph, a different, quiet war was unfolding in the heart of the empire, in the palace at Karakorum. It was Ögedei's war with himself. His alcoholism had reached a critical point. His brother, the stern Chagatai, tried desperately to save him. He assigned a special official to Ögedei, who was supposed to count every cup of wine the Khan drank. It didn't help. Ögedei, with the cunning of an alcoholic, simply ordered an enormous cup to be made, thus technically not violating the limit. December 1241. News of yet more victories arrives in Karakorum. A feast begins. Ögedei, ignoring all pleas and warnings, drinks straight through the night. At dawn, he is dead. No conspiracy, no poison, no enemy blade. The Great Khan, ruler of half the world, sovereign of the largest continental empire in human history, died of alcohol poisoning after just another binge. His greatest enemy, the one he'd fought his entire life, had finally defeated him. And now, the most important question. Why did the death of one man in distant Mongolia stop the conquest of an entire continent? The answer lies in the unbreakable law of Genghis Khan. According to his yasa, upon the death of the Supreme Khan, all Genghisids, all princes of the bloodline, wherever they were obliged to immediately return to the capital to elect a new ruler. The law was absolute. And Batu, standing on the threshold of invading Austria and Italy, had no choice. He turned his invincible armies around and led them back to the steppe. The mobilized knights of Europe, preparing for a final battle, watched in astonishment as the enemy that had come from nowhere just as suddenly vanished back into nowhere. It's an incredible historical paradox. The man who began the conquest of Europe also stopped it without issuing a single order. His genius created the empire, but his vice saved a civilization. So, let's return to the question we started with. How did an alcoholic build the greatest empire in history? Now we see the answer. Ögedei wasn't just a drunkard. He was a paradox. He ascended the throne not through strength, but as a political compromise. And precisely because he wasn't a great warrior like his father, he became a great builder. His pivotal decisions, creating the capital, Karakoram, launching the nervous system of the Yam, introducing paper money, show that he thought not as a nomad, but as an emperor. He finished his father's work in China to prove his legitimacy and sent an army west to manage the ambitions of his elite. Every one of his actions was part of a brilliant calculation. But Ögedei's tragedy is that his managerial genius couldn't overcome his personal demon, and in the end, it was this demon that defined his empire's borders, inadvertently saving Europe. Ögedei's story is just one chapter in a grand saga. His death didn't stop the conquests, it only changed their direction, passing power from Ögedei's children to the children of his brother, Tolui. The next great Khan, who would once again cement the empire with an iron hand, was his cousin Mongke. It was he who, continuing Ögedei's work, would send his brothers on campaigns that would change the face of the world forever. Thus, the grandsons of Genghis Khan would step onto the historical stage, Hulagu, who would burn Baghdad, and Kublai, who would conquer all of China. Their stories are full of intrigue, betrayal, and great achievements. Want to know what happened next? Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episodes in our series on the great Khans of the Mongol Empire.